In my last video, I said everyone's free to have their own opinion, but this time,
Vai sim, menina.
every time someone calls Yoko a good dad, a fairy dies. Like, let's be real, the man was barely a father, but saying he was good at it, that's a stretch and a half. And today, I'm going to debunk the arguments that defend this idea, and hopefully I'll make you hate him as much as I do by the end of the video. But don't get it twisted. I love hating this guy. He's such a vital piece of our King's story, especially for Vine Jinx, and I'm not here to discredit that. So without further ado, let's dive in straight into the video. Backstory and motivations. One of the most precious things about Arcane is the depth and complexity of its characters, especially the key ones. They all come with a backstory that explains their current motivations and most of the time leaves us heartbroken.
Ever wonder what it's like to drown?
Even the characters who fit more into the villain archetype are deeply humanized, making it possible for us to sympathize with or even relate to them. But let me tell you something I hope you will carry in your hearts forever. Trauma can explain certain actions, but it never justifies them. Someone's past, their traumas and struggles can help us understand their behavior, but it will never excuse hurting others. This is why Arcane resonates so deeply with us. Practically, all its characters make mistakes and hurt those around them, challenging our need to pick sides. The best way to fully enjoy the series is to let go of that and accept that not everything can be neatly divided into good and evil. But that doesn't mean harm isn't done and that we can't judge it. Silco started with noble motivations. He seemed to dream of freeing his people from Piltover's oppression, envisioning a zone where they could live with dignity without constantly fighting to survive. After the rebellion at the bridge, while Vander decided to avoid further wars to spare his people, Silco remained determined to achieve his goals no matter the cost. And that would be fine if his motivations had stayed about Zaun's independence and well-being. But when you develop a drug, shove it up into everyone's ass and use it as a tool to oppress the very people you claim to fight for, you officially lost the plot. Homie literally said, "How do I make things better for my people?"
By making them worse.
So even his motivations weren't all that great, and over time they became purely selfish, fueled by his hunger for power. Sure, he probably felt excluded and humiliated when most people chose to follow Vander, but again, that might explain why he did what he did, but it doesn't justify it. So if your argument for Silco's parenting style with Jinx starts with this tragic backstory, yeah, you're off to a bad start. And trust me, it gets way worse. He raised Jinx. If your defense for Silco being a good father is simply that he raised Jinx into adulthood, my friend, we've got a big problem. First, just because you took care of a child, provided basic needs like food and shelter, and ensured they made it to adulthood doesn't automatically make you a good parent. Second, you're forgetting that the only reason Jinx needed someone else to take care of her as a child in the first place is that Silco himself orchestrated an ambush that tore her family apart so he could use her real father as a war monster and kill her siblings, including her. Like, oh my god, this actually pisses me off so much. Silco was literally the reason her life went to hell. He even planned to kill her in this scene but changed his mind after she hugged him, and for the first time after maybe years, he felt accepted and needed. Here he saw an opportunity to be loved and to use that to his advantage. Yep, you heard that right. Silco used Jinx. But if that's not enough to prove my point, here comes another argument people often bring up, which is really just an extension of this last one. In his own way, he loved her.
Okay, now you actually make me want to blow myself up like Isha did.
I need to calm down. Everything's fine.
Amanda.
I'm an adult.
Oh boy, I don't even know where to start with this one. Love is a subjective concept, open to many interpretations. But the fact that people generally call whatever Silco felt for Jinx love is deeply concerning. I feel like nowadays it's getting harder and harder to form relationships based on true love and mutual respect. The result is increasingly blurred lines between healthy and toxic or abusive relationships. We're starving for affection, and that can lead us to lower our standards and accept just about anything. What makes me reject the idea that Silco's feelings for Jinx were love is precisely the concept of love I believe in. Bell Hooks, an American author and feminist theorist, wrote in her book All About Love, quote, But when we understand love as the will to nurture our own and another's spiritual growth, it becomes clear that we cannot claim to love if we are harmful or abusive. Love and abuse cannot coexist. She goes further, saying that many of us find it difficult to recognize that we suffered some kind of abuse or neglect, physical or emotional, in childhood, since that would be admitting that we came from a dysfunctional family. She says, quote, "Many of us need to cling to an idea of love that makes abuse acceptable, or at least make it seem like, no matter what happened, it wasn't so bad." If for some reason it is too hard to pinpoint what made Silco such a toxic parental figure for Jinx, let me put it this way. When Silco found Powder crying and alone, she believed that Vite had left her. But we all know, and I hope we all know, that Silco had actually told Marcus to kill Vite, but that jerk got cold feet and decided a better fate for a 15-year-old was rotting in the maximum security prison where she was beating regularly. Die an awful death, Marcus. Oh wait, he already did. At some point, Marcus reported back to Silco claiming the job was done. Later, when Sevika informs him that Vi is back, he says,
From the dead.
but show us that he believes Marcus. Now, imagine how many times Silco saw Powder crying, dealing with the guilt of accidentally killing her siblings and thinking her sister had rejected her for it. And every single time, he fed into the narrative, fed her insecurities, despite knowing that Vi was dead by his order. Do I really need to remind y'all that Powder was just a kid? That after that night, she probably cried herself to sleep for days, maybe even weeks, and still holding on to the hope that Vi would change her mind and come back for her. And during all that time, Silco hid the truth from her, just so he could fill that void and manipulate her, making the girl completely dependent on him. He was the main reason Jinx's mental health became such a mess. And let's not even get started on how he took all of Jinx's creative potential and used it to turn her into his personal wildcard weapon instead of something that could actually be fulfilling and good for her. In this universe, we see Jinx as super paranoid, emotionally unstable, spending her time making bombs and killing helpless animals. In the Time Bomb episode, we see how Powder had the potential to be a scientist, creating tech innovations that could help her community thrive. So we can't even say he fostered her creativity in a positive way. Some people might go as far as to say that Silco was the only one who believed in Jinx's potential, but that's not true either. Vi already did that. Long story short, Jinx never needed Silco. He just made her believe she did because truthfully, he needed her. Now, I'm not saying he didn't develop some kind of affection for her over time, but love? Nope, he didn't. Don't cry, you're perfect. This line gives me the chills, and not the good kind. There's literally a whole fandom out there worshipping these words like they the best possible last words Silco could say to Jinx before he died. Spoiler, they're not. Let's add some context here, shall we? In this scene, Jinx is completely unhinged. In less than 3 minutes, she's committed kidnapping, hostage-taking, psychological torture. Seriously, why don't we talk enough about how messed up this was? And later, 4 murders. And through all of this, the only thing that gets under Silco's skin enough for him to speak up is when Vi calls Jinx Powder. And what does he say?
Her name is Jinx.
Which basically translates to, she's mine. Jinx's mental split keeps her in a constant state of suffering. And not only was Silco one of the reasons she ended up that way in the first place, but he also wouldn't let her merge her past and present, wouldn't let her become whole whenever she had the chance. Because the only way she could stay with him was by rejecting anything that wasn't about him. Her past, her family, and even herself. The truth is, at that point, there was no way to erase one side of her without the other. The healthiest path for Jinx would have been to reconcile both parts of herself. But for Silco, that wasn't acceptable because it would have meant losing the control he had over her. Once again, his motivations were entirely selfish. And after everything she did, even turning him into Swiss cheese, Silco still looked her in the eyes and told her she was perfect. At first, that might sound like unconditional love, but it's really just another form of manipulation to keep her tied to him. The only reason Silco thought Jinx was perfect was because he made her that way. She became exactly what he wanted her to be, even if that meant being a completely traumatized, insecure, and emotionally dependent girl. As she is, Jinx has no sense of self because the codependent relationship Silco built with her never allowed her to figure out who she really was or what she truly wanted. That's why she's always looking for his approval, even if it means risking her life. So when Silco calls all of that perfect, he's just reinforcing the path he approves of, the one he wants her to keep following to make him proud. In that moment, he locks her emotional prison and takes the key with him. And it gets worse. Jinx interpreted all of that manipulation as love. She believed he loved her unconditionally, no matter how much she messed up. That put his love on a pedestal no one else could reach, especially Vi. That's why right after, Jinx tells her,
I thought maybe you could love me like you used to, even though I'm different. But you changed too.
Jinx wanted Vi not just to love her despite her mistakes, but to validate him, to be proud of them, like Silco was. But unlike him, Vi couldn't and shouldn't do that. She's one of the only people who truly loves Jinx because despite everything she's done, and she did a lot, Vi still believes in her. Now, compare all of that Silco nonsense to the reunion scene.
Things changed when you left. I changed. I know. Pow Pow, I know. You did what you had to do to survive. Me too. It's okay. What matters is we're together.
See the difference? She doesn't applaud or encourage her mistakes, but she understands, accepts, and forgives them while also relating to them. That's what real love looks like. Encouraging someone to be their best self and supporting them along the way. Another big downside to Silco's influence is how Jinx can even grasp the idea of loving multiple people at the same time, of sharing, of living in a community. That's why for her, it's either her or Caitlyn. Vi can't have both. That's how Silco treated her. He was the only person she could love. That mindset is super childish. It's like a baby who is in the early stages of mental development and is still learning that the world is not just about them and their mother or primary caregiver. See how damaging that is? With Silco, she didn't grow, she regressed. It's no surprise that she still has childish behaviors even as a teenager. In summary, Silco might be a cool character, and he is. I love him. I truly love him. But he was a terrible father figure. Toxic, manipulative, selfish, you name it. And if you watched all of this and still don't get my point, well, I can't really help you.
Sorrows, sorrows, prayers.
Speaking for myself, I truly believe the stories we connect with, whether in movies or shows, can teach us a lot about ourselves. Some of the biggest lessons in my life came from pieces of fiction, which is why I get so passionate when I come across something like Arcane. So if there's one takeaway I hope you get from this video, is to reflect on your concept of love. What is love to you? Once again, let me know your thoughts in the comments and see you next time!